Hi, this is Duncan Nisbet, the roving reporter for Let's Test, here with the wonderful Tim Lister. Hi, Tim. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, Dunks. How are you?
Very good, very good. Firstly, I want to thank you so much for your time. It's very, very appreciated.
Well, my next stop is a haircut. Gotta, so I look rather dapper when I get to Sweden.
Yeah, likewise with me. So fantastic. So obviously we're here to talk about Let's Test, but also I'd like to touch on obviously Peopleware was one of the biggest one that I'm aware of. I know waltzing with bears is another one of yours.
Right.
But yeah, so firstly, talking about Let's Test, not only have you got a keynote, you've also got a half day tutorial.
Yes.
So let's start with the keynote. Have you got it? Have you got any plans yet for what you're going to do?
Yeah, I'm gonna try something. I've done it only once, and it's not directly about testing, but it's probably all about testers.
Okay.
And it basically is well at at the word level, it's about me. It's about my personal professional history. But the intent of the whole talk is to get, especially since this is a kickoff talk, is to get everybody thinking about their own history and the people that they've met and interacted with who've helped them on their way or opened new ideas to them. That it is one of those things where we, kind of go to work every day, but it is the older I get, the more you realize that it is a community of colleagues and that the more you take advantage of your colleagues and their knowledge and their quirky friendships and all that kind of stuff,
Yep.
the more pleasure you have in this profession. And it's a hard profession, but on the other hand, I think it can be enormously rewarding if you kind of take up the collegial spirit of of software development as a whole and look at it as an amazing adventure where only groups of people can succeed. Not anything done by an individual is almost impossible nowadays. Right? And so it's what we call teams, but it's collections of people with skills, trying all to work together to do something nearly impossible, which is exciting.
Yeah.
So I want to use my own personal history because I suspect many people in the room will not be anywhere near my age. They'll be the age of my sons, and I just wanted to let them know that after 40 plus years in the business, you start to look at things in many different ways, and it's peer friendships, but it's also mentors and coaches and people who you bumped in along the way. And sometimes it's really bad experiences too that make you shift gears and go, "Whoa, that was not fun. That wasn't interesting." So it's going to be a call and I'm sure, I think this is probably coals to Newcastle, because I suspect very much that Less Test is going to be kind of like Cast, and very good camaraderie and very open discussions, and on into the night over beer, things like that. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I know that's what the organisers try and foster, is that open conferring element of
Right.
the conference. Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, brilliant! That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
And then how's does that going to relate to your workshop at all, or are they completely two separate things?
Yeah, they're two different topics, but part of me has always loved the uncertainty and the risk of the work, and loved in the sense of enjoy the challenge. And so I consider myself a kind of a risk management zealot on the spectrum. And in a way, you know, context driven testing is right along my philosophy of, to be really good, you cannot be formulaic and think you're excellent. You can't, anybody who talks about best practices, I just shake my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say that's a pretty good practice some of the time. How's that?
Yeah.
Don't oversell it. I mean, best, it's so arrogant and it's so anti-intellectual, really, if you think about it. I mean, there are just so many variables at play when we're trying to do our work. To say that, we have found the touchstone and now we don't have to think hard about what we're really doing. We just follow these heuristics and guidelines and somehow great product comes out the other end. Oh, bullshit, you know.
It's even with the whittling it down to best practice in context. I went with that for a while, but then I
Yeah.
started thinking about context, and you touched on it there. How many different variables are there in a context?
Right.
And then you bring back the human interaction. I mean, so one week we may deliver one part of the product, and then the next week, yeah, we did it last week, let's do it this week. But in that time, the interactions of the people developing that software have changed. Like, so one bloke might be going through a divorce, one might have a hangover a different day, and so you wouldn't have exactly the same context as you had the week before. It's
Sure.
impossible, right?
Right. And especially when you get projects that are a little bit larger, you know, you're working for a year or two or something like that. All sorts of variables that were never in your control at all are at play and can have profound effect on your project. You know,
Of course.
Competition out there is changing, technology is changing. As you said, everybody's personal life is changing, the fortunes of the company are changing,
Yeah.
and you know nothing holds still while we stop and build software products. And so, to me, recognizing and Tom DeMarco and I have this phrase that I really like. You court risks. You don't run away from them. You're not a daredevil eagerly embracing all sorts of silly risks, but you court uncertainty and risk in order to have a good chance of succeeding. And you have to recognize risk to accept it and say, you know, yes, these are, you know. And to me, you know, if you're not dealing with risk and uncertainty, you're dealing with all the easy stuff.
Okay. Right? That makes sense. And sort of swerving the kind of the deeper transformational opportunities.
Yeah, but what it's going to be is I'm going to be talking and they'll be talking for a while, and then I've got a little workshop problem we're going to work on.
Right. Okay.
Which is rather open ended. You know, it's a young business starting up, and I'm going to ask people to work in groups and come up with, you know, risks they see and maybe what they could do to mitigate or what they might propose to the big boss, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Then maybe a few more memos from the boss may appear all of a sudden, things like that.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's something I really care about, so it's always fun to do.
Okay. Yeah. And do you envisage you'll get some new learnings from it? Oh, seems to have lost you.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Right. Do you envisage you'll get some learnings from it as well?
Oh, sure. I mean, that's one of the reasons I do conferences that I do is I'm assuming I'm going to meet all sorts of interesting people, and whether in the class or over lunch or whatever, it will be a place where ideas go. I mean, where was I?
Talking about your
the first time I guess the first all testing conference I went to was CAST, and I've been to a couple of CASTs and they've been wonderful, fun, because of the interaction both in the room and outside. It was spectacular. So yeah, I'm looking forward to interacting with the whole group. And there's a lot of tracks going on at one time. Oop. You froze up on me again.
Yeah. Can you?
Am I okay? Am I coming through at your end?
You're frozen, but I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you and you're frozen. As long as we can talk, let's keep going.
Let's keep going. Yeah, because recording the audio is fine. So you talk about tracks. Are there any tracks that you're going to attend that's taken your interest?
There's one that I've got the keynote and then I've got a half a day. So that Monday, I think it's Monday, is the one about games.
Yes.
It looks intriguing to me, and I've got I still haven't narrowed it down because I've got all day Tuesday where I can have my busman's holiday. So I gotta figure out what I want to do with my whole Tuesday, and then really early Wednesday morning I've got to head back to the States.
Right.
So I'll be there Tuesday and Tuesday night as well.
Oh wow, so it's a flying visit.
Yeah, such is life.
Yeah, that's it. Trying to squeeze everything in. Hi, it's Duncan Nisbet, the roving reporter for Let's Test, here again with Tim Lister. Take two. How are you, Tim? You well?
I'm fine.
Great. Right, so in our first chat, we spoke about your keynote and your sessions. for Let's Test, and we also moved on to see what you'd be interested in your downtime. You mentioned you'd be up for the games with Michael Bolton and Paul Holland on Monday. And Tuesday, you said you've got a busman's holiday. Have you had a chance to look at what you're going to go for?
I'm not sure. I think. Well, I always love to hear James Bach talk, so I might go to James's session that's in the middle of the day.
Yep.
And then I met Tim Coulter at a cast meeting, and it was actually very funny. Tim was working for a small startup company, and his company shared a deck with my company, the Guild, down in the West Village.
Okay.
And I had never met him, but we literally, we had the deck, and we'd have lunch out there. We had a table, they had a table, whatever. And there he was, and so we were neighbors. We didn't even know it. We met at the meeting. I think it was Toronto or someplace. And so he's always and he's, I don't know. Do you know Tim?
I've spoken to him for Let's Test. Yeah, I've never actually met him.
Yeah, he's done a really interesting thing. He got a job, and he convinced the new boss that he could do it 100% at home. But the trick was he's traveling around the world. He said, that's a great trick. He's traveling around the world, living in a spot for a while, and then moving on. And he's slowly working his way around the world, I guess. And I assume he's probably working kind of part-time. Like when he's actually in transit, the boss knows it, and that's fine. So I thought that was one clever tester. You get paid while you travel around the globe and have a great time.
That's it.
So I look forward to catching up with him.
Definitely, yeah.
I think his session is like the last session before we break for dinner in the evening on Tuesday, I guess it is. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Excellent. That's good. Is there anything more you want to speak about Let's Test before we move on?
No, I'm just looking forward to it. It sounds like a lot of fun. I was looking at, since we started talking this weekend, I was looking at the conference center, which kind of looks cool. It's on a big parcel of land, and
yeah, it's amazing.
You've been to this conference center?
Yes.
Yes.
Hang on, my reminder's just popped up. I can't see you.
Oh, okay.
So this is the third year that it's been running, and the venue's lovely. It's kind of really excluded and out of the way. So it's a real chance for people to get together and actually confer, as we spoke about earlier.
Yes, exactly.
So it's good. There's no distractions. There's no just nipping to the shops. They're a long way away.
Now that was my alarm reminding me that our conversation was going to start in 10 minutes.
Likewise, pesky reminders. So there's no just popping out to the shops. It's there are bikes available, which is good. So you want to go for a nice bike ride. It's very pleasant.
Great.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
That's it. Yeah, building up the excitement. Not long now. Not long.
Yeah, right. A week.
A week. Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
So I'd like to talk about Peopleware, if I may.
Sure.
So this is now the third edition.
Right.
Was it some 25 years since the first one?
Yeah. It's just about, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Tom
and I are calling it different than the third edition. We're calling it the last edition.
The publishers are a bit more hopeful, are they?
Yeah. I don't know, but we did edition 2. I'm trying to remember, like 12 years after the first one.
Right.
I don't even remember what year we published Peopleware. The first edition. I'd have to go look it up.
I've got it. If you want to have it.
But now it's a proper ebook as well as a book. If you're ancient, you can actually get paper.
The one that you can actually touch.
Yeah, and write notes on and things like that. So.
I think it's fantastic. So. Obviously, I'm relatively new to the software industry, and I'm interested to know how you structured the third edition, if it was different to how you structured the second edition, and if you've had any interesting findings around the emergence of agile and lean practices. So has that changed some of like the cubicle farms you spoke about in the second edition?
Yeah. What we did, the second edition, what we did is we left the first edition intact, and we added a whole new section. I forget how many, 8, 9, 10 chapters.
Yep.
This one, Tom and I decided, you know what, it's too dated. So we cleaned up edition 1, 2, moved things around, and then added, I think we did 8 or 9 new chapters as well. So Well, the interesting thing about the cubicle farm is we never even came close to winning that battle. And we did in some organizations, but the vast number of organizations really didn't want to hear about having a space where people could actually hear themselves think. And so that was kind of rare. On the other hand, there were some organizations that had some really thoughtful conversations about space. The agile stuff, well, to me, and maybe it's generational. There's three kinds of space that you always need, it seems to me, especially when you're working in groups. Space when you can work by yourself if you have to. And it doesn't have to be your office. It could be, in Peopleware, I wrote about in college that I would go to the library to really study. And there were even degrees of studying. Like if you were in like the one of the reading rooms, that meant you can interrupt me and we'll go have a coffee.
Yeah.
Right? But if you were really working on a paper or doing something that was really hard, you went into the stacks, into the books themselves in the library, and they had in the stacks they'd have a random desk at the end of a row, and that meant even if you're my girlfriend, you do not bother me. I'm working.
Yeah.
and so there's work alone, and there's working groups where a space where the team can get together and talk, right? And then the other kind of space is one-on-one space, where you can have a conversation without bothering everybody else, but space for you and I to talk without interrupting all our other teammates.
Yep.
And I believe in that. I mean, the interesting thing is you see the ultimate crime is you hear people say, I'm staying home this morning. I got to get this done.
Yes. Yep.
Or whatever, right?
Yep.
That is the ultimate crime. That means, your home is got better workspace than the office because he's supposed to give you the workspace, right?
Yep.
So, and the interesting thing is, one of the things the agile folks, I understand conversation, I understand overhearing things, but come on, there's all sorts of things that you don't want other people to hear. I mean, it seems to me, the two of us are working on something. We don't, we're pair programming. We don't need other people in on this conversation. It's you and me. We're writing code together.
Yeah.
The planet should be away from us. So maybe it is my generation. I just find that I don't need fancy space. And Tom and I never meant fancy, space with indoor potted trees and things like that. Just kind of basic protection.
Yeah.
And so I still hear for instance, I have a friend who's is a manager in advertising, and they went to open plan seating, as they called it, and she hates it. She now works Fridays at home because that's when she has her private conversations with her employees and other people about, they're trying to get new business, and it's very competitive. So they don't need information leakage going on as people overhear what's going on.
Of course.
And so it's one of those things.
As I have to say, so the current gig I'm on, they've really adopted that idea of little breakout areas. And one of the things I like, they have soft furnished high back chairs that are kind of curved, so you're almost in your own little cylinder, if you will.
Right.
It's only like 4 foot high, but it's just enough that if you're sat down, you can have an intimate conversation without people. It's lovely. And then obviously you've got the people on the floor. But so going back to cubicle farms, I've not experienced cubicle farms. I think my experience has more been in banks, rows and rows of desks, like a battery hen.
Right.
And every time I kind of talk about the ball pen and things like that, the furniture police kick in and say, yeah, we can't do that because all the wires are routed along the banks of the desks, and it would cost too much money to rip them up and put them into circles. I'm like, oh, okay, right. So that's the only reason we're not doing it.
Right.
Fine, but yeah, you do see people, don't you, making their own space to do what they want to do, as you say. So we're pair programming.
Yeah, one of the things I've seen, and I think it's a great idea, is give the team the space and let the team decide how to divide it up. Say, this is your space, and they'll come up with interesting ways. And also, it's a decision of theirs, so they're going to live with their own decision, and rather than having, muttering and moaning and groaning about, the furniture police or whoever.
That's it, stealing chairs.
Yeah, exactly.
There's oh crikey, my mind's just gone blank. Okay, no, I'll get it. I'll move on from there. I'm sure it'll come back to me.
Okay.
But so, was there any other interesting kind of developments from the second to the third editions?
Well, a couple of things. One of them is from the time we got the second to third, there was this explosion of distribution where you find quote unquote virtual teams where somebody's in one city, somebody else is in another city. They might be in different time zones. I have a client that's an international telephony company, and they have virtual teams where people are on different continents and they're supposedly teammates, which is kind of interesting. But the whole outsourcing and distribution is totally exploded. And now it's really rare but wonderful to find a whole team together and so they can all have lunch together.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. It really is rare. And up until second edition, that I would say would be the most common mode for a team was co-location.
Yeah.
And I can understand co-location sometimes, but sometimes I think it's, to be honest with you, sloppy. It's just sloppy management. That kind of thing. So that was a big change, and we talk about it in different ways in Peopleware 3.
So, and were there any motivations behind that? Was it a financial motivation or organizational motivation?
I think there's a bunch of things. One is like you and I. You're in Britain, I'm in New York, and we're having a free conversation with Skype with cameras. It was the transition to communication tools got a lot better. So, and also, I think a lot of people felt that they were quite happy not going to the office.
Okay.
I don't know about you, but I had 2 boys. I wanted to go to the office. You got a 4-year-old at home or whatever. Jeez. I needed to go to a workspace. And I think that's changed a lot. And you find people now living in places where they choose to live and for lifestyle reasons or whatever, and maybe they take a little bit of a pay cut or whatever, but they can have a job and work out of their home and live in, Alaska or wherever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that, so I think there were a bunch of factors that moved toward that. Even things like the EU, if you think about it, it basically takes the borders down, and so you can have a tester in Spain and a developer in Italy, no problem. And so, and people move around a ton. I have a friend who works in Madrid, and it must have been 4 or 5 years ago. It was before Spain really had its crisis of unemployment and things.
Yep.
And he was like, Tim, this is getting really bad here. He said, we are having a brain drain. All the best students coming out of university, they're not even looking for jobs in Spain. They're immediately going to other EU countries for employment. Yeah. So, when you hear the numbers, it's so you end up with Spaniards living in Antwerp or things like that. And it really has made the flow quite different.
I bet. Yeah. It's probably interesting statistics, isn't it? Watching a brain drain before a crisis, economy crisis.
Yeah. Well, it got horrendous. I mean, my friend is about my age, and he was really concerned because it was maybe 3 or 4 years, and it hasn't gotten much better. Something like some astronomical number, like 30% of university graduates were unemployed who were under the age of 30.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. But the thing was, they did a further study. They looked at university graduates under the age of 30 who had jobs, and they asked a very simple question: do you need your diploma to have this job? Right. So if you're a waiter, you don't need to be going to 4 years of university to be a waiter or a taxi cab driver.
Right.
And if you add that to it, it's almost 50% unemployment.
Wow. Okay.
Underemployment or unemployment.
Yeah. That's crazy.
It is crazy.
Because I know whilst we were down there, the unemployment rate was 1 in 4. But for the border town La Linea, which borders Gibraltar, it's 1 in 3.
Wow.
It's It's just shocking because Madrid has kind of forget. Well, you know what the scaremongering is. Madrid has forgotten about La Linea, the border town.
Yeah.
You're friends with Gibraltar. See you later. But it's
Yeah.
it's really amazing numbers, isn't it?
Yeah. And so people are moving. I mean,
Yeah.
well, I live in New York. It's amazing in New York. New York is truly a melting pot, waves of immigration. And, so for instance, I remember we had a wave that was relatively quiet. Um, Russians. Russians came in IT, good developers, good testers. All of a sudden, you'd be in a financial building or something, and all of a sudden, a third of the people are Russian. It's great.
Yeah.
You look at all the waves of smart people coming in and doing good work.
It's good to build a cultural diversity as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it does.
What they bring to the table.
Yeah.
I've remembered my question.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't a question, it was more of a comment. It was having teams that are making similar sounds in a similar workspace. I believe that was from Peopleware, wasn't it?
Yeah, that what you'll
That's
find
amazing.
is rhythms.
Yeah,
People will get in a rhythm, a quiet time or a conversation time, and yeah, it's very, very interesting that way.
but see, not even within the rhythms of the team, across teams. I observed there was a development team next to like a sysadmin and front end operations team, and it was just stressful. But then the other end of the building, all you had was development teams, and it was a lot more calmer, even though it was open plan. But
Right,
because you had these two people making very conflicting sounds, noises,
right.
it was a tense space to be in. So
Yep.
just started thinking about that when I was working in it. So that'll move myself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it is very common that you see uh, the team itself will get into certain rhythms. And as you say, if things are going that are different, so you've got people who are on the phone all day near you,
Yeah,
and they're salespeople, let's say, or whatever. It'll drive you nuts.
yeah. Standard.
One of the great things is, the humans have to hear conversations, right? If two people are talking, you can't not listen,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're wired. But Tom DeMarco pointed out years ago, he said, there is something more powerful than two people having a conversation. It's when you hear half a conversation. And that's listening, somebody's on the phone and it's arrhythmic because you don't know when they're going to start talking again because you can't hear the other party.
Of course, yeah.
And so it is, forget working. You're listening to that person sitting 5 feet away from you because they're talking, to their spouse or something, and you don't want to know, but you can't stop listening. Meanwhile, there goes another day at the office.
Tapping into someone else's conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and the other thing is, and I really see it as generational, and more is concentration. For me, especially when as a young man as a developer, I could concentrate for a couple of hours and write great hunks of code and do good work.
yeah.
But I only could work in meaningful hunks. I mean, if somebody said we're going to have a meeting in 10 minutes, I wouldn't even start
No,
because I knew just as I was getting rolling, I got to go to this meeting. Right? I have to believe I got a hunk of time, and uh, so and that's not just solo work. That's you know, three people getting together and having some work on architecture, trying to work some things out. You have to have a hunk of time for the three of you to be left alone in a room with some whiteboards where you can battle it out.
yeah,
You can go to it. And to me, I've always felt like our work is intense, right? You kind of get ready and then you burst and then you recover.
yeah.
It's a lot of, especially the intellectual stuff, right? You can't work intellectually 8 hours a day. You just fry your brain. But when you're really working, whether you're testing or whether you're developing, it's that concentration level goes up, and you isolate yourself. You're really engaged. Then you're making your salary. But the 8 hour day has nothing to do with it. It's those moments of engagement where you really have insight and you have detail that makes all the difference.
So that's one of the common, I wouldn't call it complaints, maybe a frustration that I see programmers having is they're not allowed to get into their flow in an
Right.
agile environment. They're either being pulled out for ad hoc meetings, well not meetings, stand-ups, gatherings, and
Mm-hmm.
they're just like, I need time to get into my flow.
Yeah, I've seen teams actually have little tiny, I wouldn't even call them conference rooms, little almost closets. And if you want to, you go in there and claim it and work. So if you're doing solo work or two of us are doing something, we go in there and that signals everybody, unless the building's on fire, leave us alone.
Yeah.
We're only going to be in here for an hour or two, leave us alone. And teammates can learn that. Yeah, they will.
That's it. Yeah, the unwritten
Yeah.
rules.
Yeah, because then it's just saying like, I'm at my desk, I'm doing work, but I'm interruptible. As against now I am sequestered. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than saying your normal workplace should be your sequester spot. Doesn't have to be. It could be the library stacks.
Yeah.
Right. That kind of thing.
I see. We often see the headphones on. That's a kind of unwritten rule that is don't disturb me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And quite often they haven't got any music on, but it's just a signal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just the Bose sound mufflers.
Yeah. Leave me alone. Fantastic. So, so your relationship. Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, it's okay.
Okay. So your relationship with Tom then. So has that changed much over the 25 years?
Somewhat. We used to work together in the office here in New York, but Tom moved many years ago now up to Maine, into a town right on the shore of Maine.
Right.
But we communicate all the time and we see each other. And one of the things is Tom's had a couple of things happen. Tom likes to write fiction, and so for a while he would take like the summers off, and he wouldn't do work, and he'd take like July and August to write, which was great.
Yeah.
And slowly over time, he now is teaches a course at the University of Maine on ethics.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's great. And so he's kind of straddling. I don't want to use the R word, retirement, but he's got other interests than that take a good amount of his time.
You do what he wants to do.
Yeah. I mean, he's in the nice position of not worrying about the money.
Yeah.
At the Guild, we always joke you could be rich or have children. Take your pick. Tom's rich. I have children.
Seems I'm following your path.
Right. So yeah.
Did that make the writing of the book different? Did that distance make the writing of the book much different?
I don't think so, because we would meet. We would get together. And the way we work is we do a lot of front work before we actually write.
Okay.
We go down and talk in detail about things. And we even actually wordsmith phrases and talk about examples or stories you want to put in there.
Yeah. And
things like that. And then the writing is the final step. When we really know what we want to say, now it's a matter of execution of the writing. That's the way we tend to write. So we would meet, and then the writing is kind of separate, and we would trade it. And I'd tear up his writing, and he'd tear up mine, and we'd go from there. But one of the great things about Tom, who is a great colleague, is he writes alone, like some of his fiction. And what was it, last year, he says, Tim, do you have a Kindle? And I say, no, I don't have a Kindle. And he says, I'll give you one. I got an old one. And I said, you don't need to do that. And he says, no. I want you to have something on the Kindle. And I said, okay. So he sends me the Kindle, and on it is a novel he wrote. I didn't even know he was writing this novel. He's my buddy, and he doesn't tell people. And it's a really large novel called Andronescu's Paradox. And you can buy an ebook form. He published it himself. It's science fiction, or I put it, it's fictional science. Okay. And I won't give it away, but there, so the first time I see Tom, I say, Tom, it's the best fiction he's written. It's really a page turner, and I said, this is going to be a movie. This has got, I can see this is a movie. It's a great story. And we're trying to say, Tom, how long did it take you to write this? And he goes, I've been working on it for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And he never told any of us. And he said, I didn't want to tell anybody because maybe it would just, waste away. I wouldn't work on it and it'd dry up on me. And I said, well, this is great. And then he totally means it. He looked at me and he said, it's the first of a trilogy. And I started laughing. It took him 10 years, so he's got to live 20 more years to get the other two books out. I don't know if we can get that far.
What's his response to that, to your laughing?
I don't know. He knew. I used to say, I know how old Tom is. I'm not going to say how old Tom. Tom's older than I am even. And I just said, 20 years to get the next two out. And he said, I hope not. But so yeah, that was very much his way. So for instance, like he was the one that said, look, we're not going to sign a contract with the publisher until we got the manuscript.
Okay.
And I think that was a great idea. He said, don't worry about advances, any of that type of stuff. No. Let's write it. We'll find a place to publish it. You know that. And I said, and it's a nice way to work because then no one's harassing you, because books do come in fits and starts.
I bet. Yeah.
You got other things to do.
So is there a story why you've moved from the D&H publishers to Addison Wesley, or is it
Addison Wesley is Dorset House is moving toward Addison Wesley. They've taken a bunch of D&H books and they made them ebooks and things like that. So that's why it's now an Addison Wesley book. But the editing was done through Dorset House.
Oh, okay, right.
So
kept the old ties.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I haven't got any more questions.
Okay.
Do you have anything for us or for me?
I don't know. Well, I'll see everybody. I'm getting in on Sunday, but I'm probably going to need a shower and a nap for a while after the overnight flight from New York. So I'm getting in Sunday. And actually, I love the idea. They put up a page, an encoded page where you can see if you can find somebody to share a cab or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm meeting somebody at the airport, and we're gonna get to the conference together. So my conference is going to start about 8 a.m. on Sunday morning with one person to chat with in the car. So
That's fantastic. Great. If you can stay awake.
Yeah, I'm usually pretty good. Overnight, traveling east is hard for me because you really don't sleep at night in a plane. So, but I usually nap for a couple hours and then get up and try to stay up as long as I can and then get a good night's sleep and I'm fine. So I'll be fine for my Monday morning keynote. I promise.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you face to face.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be really good. Really good.
Yeah.
Okay, Tim. Well, thanks again for your time. Apologies for the inconvenience last week.
No problem at all.
And we'll get this online. I'll send you a link.
Terrific.
Okay.
And I'll see you a week from today, or a week from yesterday.